We're always told our society is set up to educate us. But what if that's not really its main purpose? What if, from the moment we're born, we're kind of being fed into a machine, one that's not designed for education, but for obedience? In this explainer, we're going to break down this idea of the permission machine, a system that quietly manufactures compliance and shapes how we think, act, and even what we dare to imagine. And this really gets to the core of it. With this one super provocative claim, this is not education, it's domestication. The source material argues that the systems we grow up in aren't there to enlighten us, but to, well, tame us. That's a huge accusation, right? So let's unpack what that really truly means.
Okay, so what is this permission machine? Well, here's the definition we're working with. It's a culture that basically trains us from day one to look outside ourselves for the green light. Before we act, we wait for an order. Before we dream up something new, we wait for permission. And before we speak our mind, we wait for validation. It just becomes our default setting.
So, to really get how this machine gets built, we have to go all the way back to the beginning. The whole process starts in what you could call our first classrooms, the places where we first learn how we fit into the world and how we should relate to power. And it really happens in two key stages. It all starts in the family, where we learn the absolute basics of compliance. And then that gets taken to the next level in school, where compliance gets sharpened into submission. These two places really lay the entire foundation for the machine. This right here, this digs into our very first lessons about power. The idea is that in a lot of family structures, kids learn a really fundamental equation, that love, comfort, and safety are things you earn by complying. Questioning the rules isn't seen as being curious, it's seen as being disrespectful. And that creates the blueprint for the rest of our lives. Just comply, and you'll be safe. And this just nails the next step perfectly. School takes that blueprint and scales it way up. I mean, just think about it. A traditional classroom, right? One person stands at the front and talks, and everybody else just sits there and listens. That structure, way more than algebra or history, is what teaches us the lesson. It teaches us to be passive receivers of information, not active creators of our own knowledge. And pretty soon, taking initiative starts to feel like a pretty big risk. Okay, so how does this scale up from our childhood to, well, everything else? Once those early patterns are locked in, the machine starts to amplify them on a massive scale. We move out of the little workshop of home and school and onto the full-scale factory floor of society. And the tools for this mass production, they're literally all around us. Cable news, talk radio, even our social media feeds. These are the big megaphones. They are constantly on, constantly broadcasting, constantly explaining the world to us. And here's the punchline, really. Even though they all seem different, they share the exact same structure we learned back in the classroom. It's one loud, super confident voice broadcasting out to a quiet, passive audience. Even the interaction we think we have, likes, shares, comments, it doesn't really change the basic setup. It's still a one-way street. All right, so after a lifetime of this conditioning, what's the end product? What kind of person does the permission machine actually create? Well, this section gets into the result, which is this kind of illusion of freedom that actually keeps the machine humming along perfectly. This slide lays it out perfectly. It's a really stark comparison. On one side, you've got marketplace liberty. That's the freedom the machine offers you. It's a freedom to choose your favorite brand, pick which expert's voice you want to repeat, or subscribe to a prepackaged ideology. It's basically freedom as a consumer. But then on the other side, you have genuine autonomy, the ability to think for yourself, to work with other people without being forced, and to act without waiting for someone to tell you to. The machine champions the first one while making the second one seem kinda reckless and dangerous. And this is where the psychological trap snaps shut. After 20-something years of being lectured by parents, by teachers, by the media, that passive state just starts to feel comfortable. It feels safe. We get so used to it that we actually start looking for a lecture to tell us what to think and how to feel. And that comfort zone, well, it creates this huge vulnerability. It gives a massive advantage to anyone who can master that tone of authority. People like con artists, cult leaders, and demagogues. They thrive here. They know how to sound like the expert, how to promise simple, certain answers if you'll just keep listening and keep obeying. Okay, so now let's talk about a really modern twist, a new technology that's threatening this whole system. And as you might expect, the machine is starting to fight back. So when a tool like AI comes along, what happens? The machine's gatekeepers immediately start calling it dangerous. But the argument here is that the real danger isn't that the tool is evil. The danger is that it threatens their monopoly on who gets to explain the world to the rest of us.
And that right there is the core fear. See, AI can offer a totally different model. It's not a lecture, it's a conversation. It's a tool you can use to think with, not just a voice you have to obey. And if people can start exploring ideas on their own terms, well, they might just realize they don't need masters to do their thinking for them. And that is a direct threat to the machine's power.
So, okay, if this machine is everywhere, what's the alternative? How do we actually break out of the mold? The last part of this explainer isn't about just rejecting all control. It's about totally transforming our role in the systems we live in. And that leads us to a totally different way of thinking about freedom. The argument is that real freedom isn't about having no rules at all. It's about the presence of conscious participation. It's about having the ability to actively help shape the rules and structures we live under instead of just passively accepting them. So, what does that actually look like day to day? Well, it means building a culture that's all about conversation, not lectures. It means focusing on collaboration instead of just top-down commands. And maybe most importantly, it means creating systems in our families, our schools, our jobs that actually reward real curiosity, not just quiet compliance. And all of this brings us to one last, really critical question. The tools for a more participatory culture, for building something different, they already exist. They're right here, in our hands. So the question this explainer leaves us with is a personal one for all of us. Is the only thing that's really missing the will to use them?